Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're grabbing our metaphorical shovels and digging into a really interesting situation from a source called Notes on Gardening, part 665.
Yeah, it sounds practical, like just gardening notes.
Exactly. It's about repotting a plant, sure, but a super resilient one. And our mission, really, is to pull out the lessons here about hardiness, about adaptation.
And about what happens when, internal growth kind of slams into external chaos.
It's a great setup. We're basically stepping right into the middle of a crisis.
Right after a disaster, yeah. So it's not just about, oh, here's how you repot something. It's more about seeing how a living thing handles stress, handles being forced to change. And especially what the source tells us about maybe hidden problems that were already there.
And the scene itself is pretty traumatic, isn't it? This wasn't some calm, planned gardening project.
Not at all.
No, we're talking a sudden, really violent thunderstorm, monsoon season, high winds, pouring rain.
Classic monsoon stuff.
Yeah. And the source says the immediate result was this dwarf umbrella tree got knocked completely over its pot. Damaged, basically beyond saving.
So it forced the issue, an emergency intervention.
Exactly. A crisis that demanded action right then and there.
A sudden outside force just creating this emergency opportunity, you could say.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because when the structure fails, you have to look underneath, right, at the foundations, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay, so let's break that down. The storm hits, breaks the outer structure.
Right.
But the real discovery, the thing that showed the plant's deeper state, happened when the gardener tried to lift it out of the broken pieces. What did they actually find then? What was the unexpected bit that turned this from just a cleanup into something more?
Well, this is where it gets really fascinating, how that external crisis instantly showed this major internal issue.
Okay.
When they got the plant out of that broken pot, the roots told this incredible story. The plant was severely root-bound.
Not just a little tight.
Oh, no, not just snug. The roots had totally filled the container. They were circling, matted up together, basically a solid woody block shaped exactly like the inside of the old pot.
Wow. Okay, so that completely shifts the picture for you, the listener, doesn't it? It wasn't just the storm damage.
No.
This plant was already living under maximum internal pressure, almost choked by its own growth, its own success in that container.
Exactly.
And those constraints were totally invisible until the pot literally cracked open.
Precisely. And if we want to get a bit technical, being severely root-bound means the roots just circle and circle. They can't spread out properly to get water or nutrients.
Right.
So that really dense root ball actually limits absorption. It makes the plant weaker, less stable deep down, even if it looks okay on top, green and leafy. It had basically maxed out its growth in a space that had become way too small, too restrictive.
That's such a clear image of a hidden struggle. And, we should probably mention the plant itself here.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact it endured that condition, being so root-bound and still looked healthy, that says a lot about its toughness, right?
It absolutely does. We're talking about the Schefflera arboricola variegata. Most people know it as the Dwarf Umbrella Tree.
Okay.
And yeah, this species is pretty famous for being hardy. This whole incident just proves it. It's like a masterclass in just quietly putting up with limits. It was thriving despite those tangled roots. And then, bam, the crisis reveals just how much powerful growth was happening inside.
So we've got this dual diagnosis now. External damage from the storm and this severe internal problem of being root-bound. The garden had to move fast. So what were the immediate steps? What did they actually do right after finding this?
Well, the action needed was sort of two-parted, and it had to be careful, surgical almost, to avoid more shock to the plant.
Right.
First, dealing with that root ball itself. Because it was so dense, so matted, the gardener probably had to score it.
Score it. What does that mean?
It means making some shallow vertical cuts or gently teasing apart the circling roots. You have to kind of break up that pattern to encourage them to grow outwards into the new soil, not just keep going round and round. It's like necessary violence almost for its future health.
So you have to actually disrupt the old tight pattern before you can offer it the new space. That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And then came kicking the new pot. And this is a really key detail in the source.
Okay.
They chose a new pot that was not way bigger. It was specifically 2 to 3 fingers wider in diameter than the old one, just slightly larger.
That specific measurement seems important. Why so precise, especially when you're in crisis mode? Why not just give it a massive new pot, loads of room?
That's a really good question. And it comes down to smart management, especially when something's already stressed.
Okay.
If you put a plant in a pot that's way too big, people call it overpotting, the roots just can't grow fast enough to use all that new soil.
I see.
So you end up with large areas of soil that just stay wet, soggy, and that massively increases the risk of root rot, shock. You can actually kill the plant by trying to be too generous.
Right, killing it with kindness.
Yeah.
So that 2 to 3 fingers wider rule, it's
Yeah.
like a measured step, a strategic expansion.
Yeah.
Enough room to grow and stabilize, but not so much that you overwhelm it with unused resources, potentially dangerous ones.
Precisely. It helps it adapt without adding huge new risks. It's like the minimal effective dose of intervention.
Okay.
And this solution, it also involved a total change of scene. The newly repotted Schefflera, it didn't go back to its old spot where it got knocked over. No, it was moved to a completely different microclimate within the garden.
Okay, so that relocation kind of rounds out the immediate recovery plan. It wasn't just fixing the physical damage. It was a whole system reboot in a new place.
Yeah, think about it from the plant's point of view. It's just survived a physical trauma. Its internal constraint is revealed. It gets this necessary surgery on its roots. And now, boom, it has to immediately deal with new humidity, different light, maybe more or less wind. Its resilience is being tested again right away.
That really brings up a bigger question, moving us away from just the crisis moment. How do we actually know this plant will thrive after all that?
Yeah.
Being root-bound, the storm, the root surgery, the move.
Yeah.
The source material says it has shown incredible resilience. So how do we connect this emergency response to its history, its long-term performance?
Well, we connect it by looking at its track record, the documented history of this specific plant. That resilience it showed during the storm, it wasn't just random luck. It was, you could say, conditioned behavior. Because the source notes this plant had already been moved several times before in its life.
So it had already kind of learned how to deal with environmental change way before this monsoon hit.
Absolutely. And when we say move several times, you need to think what that means for a plant.
Right. It's stuck in one place usually.
Exactly. So these moves weren't just shifting it a few feet. They were to quite different areas in the garden, which means exposure to very different microclimates.
Okay. So different conditions each time.
Yeah. One spot might have been shady and damp. The next, maybe much sunnier, windier.
So each move was like a little stress test, forcing it to adapt, building up tolerance, almost like cross-training its ability to cope.
That is the perfect analogy, yeah. This plant never had the luxury of just staying put in one perfect, stable spot. It was repeatedly forced to adjust its whole relationship with light, water, air, and that seems to have built this incredibly robust system over time.
Okay, so that severe root binding, maybe it becomes less about failure and more about like this powerful growth that happened even with all that environmental change.
That's a really insightful way to look at it. The storm challenged something that had already spent its life learning how to handle upheaval. It already knew how to set up shop quickly in a new place.
Right.
And this track record, the success, is kind of summed up in the source by how little care it actually needed.
Oh, yeah.
It apparently thrived consistently with just two main things: regular watering and minimal pest management. Basic stuff.
So it handles all this complexity, the internal binding, the violent storm, moving between different environments, but it only needs simple, consistent support to actually flourish wherever it lands.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing blueprint for hardiness, isn't it?
It really is. It sort of teaches us that high adaptability doesn't always mean needing complex fixes. Sometimes it's about having those simple core support systems that just don't fail.
Like consistent water and just keeping an eye on its health.
Yeah, the basics, like fundamental self-care maybe.
Wow.
That allowed it to handle the big, disruptive external stuff.
Wow. It's quite a contrast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between how severe that internal stress was, that root ball practically choking itself, and its history of being tough and low maintenance. It survived the storm, got forced out of its old structure, immediately adapted to a new spot. All because its simple needs were met consistently.
Yeah, the plant never really fought the change, did it? It just recognized, okay, the old pot's broken, this new spot, even if stressful, is where I need to be to survive. And it just kept growing.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up for you, the listener. What's the main takeaway here from this Schefflera arboricola story?
Well, I think there are two key things. First, that growth is often hidden and sometimes constrained. That intense root-bound state shows huge potential, huge power, even if it was also causing weakness.
Right.
And second, resilience is that ability to handle both the internal pressure and the external chaos, like a monsoon, and then successfully move into a new situation, a new structure, provided those basic supports are solid and consistent.
And that leads to maybe one final thought for you to mull over.
Yeah.
That root-bound condition, it was only discovered because the storm smashed the pot.
Right, the crisis revealed it.
The destruction of the old, comfortable structure was actually necessary to expose that hidden, powerful growth inside and to force the whole system into a new, slightly bigger, better environment.
So maybe think about what constrained strength might you be holding on to? You know, what systems in your work, or maybe your personal life, are kind of limiting your own growth?
Yeah.
And what sort of external storm might it take to make you finally acknowledge that powerful internal drive and sort of repot yourself into a situation with a bit more room to thrive?
That capacity for inner power only revealed when the comfy structure gets shaken up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the real gem we dug up from this gardening note.